After the family dinner, I opened my safe. Every dollar gone. Mom walked in smiling. "We took it for your sister's tuition." Dad added, "Don't make this ugly." I just said, "Then you won't mind what comes next." 2 days later, my brother was screaming, Mom was crying, and Dad was begging me not to go through with it. I always had a weird feeling they were watching us. Not in the horror movie sense, just watching. Tracking how we lived, what we had, how we spent. My parents knew about the safe. I told them once by accident, offhandedly, back when things were still semi-normal. Before they stopped pretending they saw me as anything but a wallet with a heartbeat. It was a fireproof floor safe hidden under our bedroom closet carpet. Nothing fancy, nothing high-tech, just solid and secure. Inside was a little over $62,000. My husband and I started saving a few years after we got married. We didn't live lavishly, didn't upgrade our phones every year, didn't travel. Every raise we got went straight into that safe. Our goal was to use it for something big. A property flip, maybe a rental house. We had dreams and that safe was holding them. My parents knew that. And they smiled at me every time they came over. A week before my brother Daniel was supposed to leave for college, my mom called and asked if we'd host a farewell dinner for him. Just immediate family and a few cousins. I didn't want to, honestly. Things had been tense for a while. Little digs, passive comments, backhanded compliments. But my husband said maybe it'd be good to smooth things over. So I said yes. The night of the dinner, everyone acted weirdly cheerful. My mom was laughing more than usual. My dad kept complimenting the house like it was his first time seeing it. Daniel barely looked at me, which wasn't new. He was always the golden child. Mom's precious boy. He got everything growing up. Attention, money, blind defense. I got the scraps and a guilt trip if I ever pointed it out. After the dinner ended and the last guest left, I went upstairs to change. I remember pausing at the top of the stairs. It was silent, but something didn't feel right. I stepped into the bedroom. The closet door was slightly open. I hadn't left it that way. I knelt down, peeled back the carpet, unlocked the safe. Gone. Every dollar. Not even an envelope left behind. I stood there frozen. I didn't even move when I heard the floor creak behind me. My parents walked in like they'd timed it. My mom had this unsettling little smile like I'd just opened a gift. My dad looked bored, like he'd been through this speech already in his head. "We took it for your brother's tuition," my mom said. Then my dad added, "Don't make this ugly." I asked them if they were being serious. My mom said yes. She said Daniel's financial aid didn't cover everything, and they couldn't bear to see his future ruined over money when I was just sitting on it. I told them that wasn't theirs to touch. My dad shrugged. He said I had more than enough and that families make sacrifices. I asked when they planned to pay it back. He said they didn't. Then my mom tried to guilt trip me. She said if I raised my voice or made this into a scene, it could trigger one of her panic episodes, and she didn't want the evening to end on a sour note. Like I was the villain. Like I was the one stealing. I let them leave. I said nothing to my husband right then. I didn't want to ruin the night more than it already was. But I didn't sleep. I sat up until sunrise, just staring at nothing. My mind was running through every sacrifice we'd made to build that savings, and how casually it was taken. The next morning I told my husband. He thought I was joking. When he realized I wasn't, he wanted to drive to their house immediately. I stopped him. I told him I wanted to try something else first. Give them a chance to do the right thing. We went over to their house the next afternoon. Calmly. We asked them to return the money. My dad chuckled and said we were being dramatic. My mom said maybe this was a sign that we didn't need it as badly as we thought. And then they asked us to leave. That was the last civil conversation. Because what they didn't know is I'd already called someone that morning. Someone who had a very good reason to take our side. And when the papers came the next day, when the threats became real, when the school was notified, everything started to crack. And 2 days after that, my brother was screaming, my mom was crying, and my dad was begging me not to go through with it. After they kicked us out of their house like we were strangers asking for handouts, my husband sat in the car staring through the windshield in complete silence. I could see him gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. But I didn't say anything. I was done talking. They had made their move. Now it was my turn. Because what they didn't know, what they never even considered, was that I had already started laying the groundwork before we even confronted them. That same morning I called Natalie. We went to college together, stayed in touch over the years. She wasn't just a lawyer. She was a shark. When I told her what happened, there wasn't even a pause. She asked if we had any records of the money, anything at all showing it was ours and not some shared family fund they could pretend they were entitled to. I had everything. Photos of the cash in stacks on our dining table. Spreadsheets we used to track our deposits. Receipts of every ATM withdrawal over the last 4 years. Even screenshots of texts where I mentioned to my mom how proud we were of how much we'd saved. In one of them she asked where we kept it. I told her. Just casually. Like an idiot. Natalie didn't waste time. She said we were well within our rights to press charges and sue. And that's exactly what we were going to do. She drafted a demand letter that same day and had it delivered to my parents' house and emailed as a PDF. It was short, legal, and very clear. Return the full amount within 48 hours or face civil and criminal action. That night my parents said nothing. No calls, no texts. My brother? Radio silence. You'd think they'd be at least a little nervous. But no. It was like they were still pretending it never happened. Then the call came. Around 6 p.m. the next day. From the university. They wanted to verify who had paid Daniel's tuition. Natalie had sent a formal letter to the school's finance office, notifying them that the tuition payment might be part of an ongoing legal dispute involving misappropriated funds. That word, misappropriated, makes universities very uncomfortable. I told the woman on the phone that the money wasn't theirs to give, and we were in the process of pursuing both a police report and a lawsuit. She said the payment would be reviewed, and in the meantime enrollment and housing arrangements might be put on hold. An hour later my phone started buzzing like crazy. First it was my mom, then my dad, then Daniel. One after the other. Dozens of missed calls, voicemails, texts piling up. They ranged from guilt-tripping and pleading to completely unhinged. I didn't respond to any of them. The next morning, Natalie forwarded me a copy of my dad's email reply to her demand letter. It was a mess. No punctuation, full of spelling mistakes. He tried to paint the whole thing as a family misunderstanding, said we were blowing things out of proportion. He offered to pay us back, slowly, over time. No apology, just excuses. Natalie's response was colder than ice. Full repayment within 24 hours or we escalate. And then finally they cracked. Around 8 p.m. that night I saw a car pull up outside our house. My brother Daniel stepped out and stormed toward the front door like he owned the place. He didn't knock. He just started shouting. Demanding we undo this mess before he got kicked off campus. Telling us we were ruining his future. My husband opened the door but didn't let him in. Daniel kept yelling. Said we were crazy. That we were turning on family. That it was just money. I didn't say a word. I stood in the hallway and watched. Then came my mom crying in the driveway. Not like real crying. The dramatic, performative kind she used to use when she didn't want to take responsibility for something. She was wailing about how she'd have a breakdown if I pushed this any further. That it was breaking the family apart. Behind her my dad just stood there. He wasn't shouting. He wasn't crying. He looked stunned. Like he hadn't expected us to follow through. Like his plan had finally run out of road. And that's when I realized, they never thought I would go all the way. They thought I'd yell, maybe threaten, and then forgive. Like always. But they didn't take my future. They stole it. They stole the years my husband and I spent scraping together every spare dollar, the sacrifices we made, the plans we had. And now they were facing consequences for the first time in their lives. The worst part, they hadn't even tried to fix it yet. But they were about to. Because Natalie had one more step in her plan. And once it was in motion they'd have to crawl back to that school and undo everything. Or deal with something they were far less prepared for. By the next morning I could tell they were waiting us out. No apology, no attempt to talk, just silence. Like they were betting I'd cool off, maybe feel guilty and let it go. Like I had before. But that version of me was gone. Natalie didn't waste a second. That morning she filed paperwork for an emergency injunction. Basically asking the court to freeze Daniel's tuition and enrollment if the funds weren't returned within 24 hours. She sent a copy straight to the university's legal department. It was no longer just a family squabble. It was a legal action involving theft, fraud, and misuse of funds. He was calm about it, methodical. Meanwhile, I was pacing in the kitchen wondering how the people who raised me had managed to justify any of this to themselves. Around 2 p.m. I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, another one. This time I picked up. It was a woman from the university's financial services department. She asked if I had a few minutes to talk. She sounded nervous. I told her yes. What she said next caught me completely off guard. Daniel's enrollment was being temporarily frozen. His dorm assignment was on hold. His class schedule had been pulled. They were reviewing the integrity of the tuition payment, and could not proceed until it was resolved. I asked what exactly that meant. She said that unless they received proof the funds were not under legal dispute, he wouldn't be attending the semester. They had escalated it to their legal counsel after receiving Natalie's notice. I thanked her and hung up. Then I just sat down and laughed once. Not because it was funny, it wasn't. It was just the first real shift. After all the years of being brushed off, minimized, dismissed, this time they couldn't ignore me. I didn't even have time to process it before the messages started. First came the angry text from my dad. You've made your point. Now stop this insanity. Then from my mom, do you really hate your brother that much? Then Daniel, WF did you do? I'm locked out of my school portal. So I didn't respond. At 4:15 p.m. I got a grainy photo via text. My mom and dad were sitting in what looked like a waiting room or office. Drained, slouched, eyes red. My mom had a tissue in her hand. Behind them was a wall with a university seal on it. They were at the school. Begging. The message that came with it was from my mom. It said, "We're at the registrar's office. We're fixing it. Please no more." Natalie called me an hour later. The university's legal team had reached out. My parents had admitted to them that the money used for the tuition was not theirs. They had borrowed it temporarily, and were now requesting a refund or cancellation of the transaction. The university agreed to reverse the payment, but only if I signed a statement confirming that I wouldn't hold the school liable. Natalie sent me the draft. I read it carefully. It wasn't about letting them off the hook. It was about getting my money back and making it legally airtight that the school was uninvolved in the theft. I signed it. Less than 2 hours later, Natalie emailed me confirmation. The school had begun the process to return the full amount. It would clear into our account within 48 hours. Daniel's enrollment was cancelled entirely. He would not be attending this semester. The silence after that was deafening. I didn't get a thank you. Not a single word from them. Just silence. They didn't apologize. Didn't ask how they could make it right. They were just embarrassed. Cornered. Exposed. And my husband? He wasn't done. That night while we were eating dinner he asked me a question I wasn't ready for. "Do you want to press charges?" I looked at him and saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen in a long time. Not anger, not rage. Just determination. And I realized he was right. Returning the money wasn't justice. They had crossed a line. And part of me wasn't ready to let them walk away from it. When the money finally landed back in our account, I thought maybe I'd feel something. Relief. Validation. Closure. Instead it felt like we just clawed back a piece of ourselves that shouldn't have needed fighting for in the first place. It felt empty. Like getting back your stolen car and realizing someone had lived in it, eaten in it, maybe even laughed in it, and you'd never feel right driving it again. But the silence that followed, that said everything. No apology. No ownership. Just radio silence from the people who had raised me, fed me, smiled at me while robbing me blind. I think they thought it was over. That now that the money was returned, I'd feel better and everything would eventually go back to how it was. What they didn't get was, there was no going back. That weekend Natalie asked to meet face to face. She came to our place, folders in hand. She'd organized every piece of evidence. Texts, voicemails, emails, even statements from the university. Then she said something that made both me and my husband pause. "There's something else." She handed me a financial activity report from my parents' account. I skimmed through until one transaction stood out like a flare. $10,000 wired to Alan Mercer. I didn't recognize the name. Neither did my husband. Natalie explained that after filing the injunction, she'd quietly brought in a private investigator, just to make sure the funds hadn't gone elsewhere. What he found was unexpected. Alan Mercer wasn't a family friend. He wasn't a tutor or an admissions counselor. He was under federal investigation. Apparently, Alan specialized in educational consulting, which sounded harmless enough, until you dug deeper. He was known for creating forged financial hardship documents, manipulating student loan applications, even helping parents set up shell accounts to move money undetected. The IRS and 2 universities were watching him closely, and my parents had paid him. They didn't just steal the money for Daniel's tuition. They were trying to scam the system on top of it. Maybe to boost financial aid. Maybe to qualify for grants Daniel wasn't entitled to. Either way, they hadn't told us or anyone, because they knew exactly what they were doing. They had taken our hard-earned money and handed it to a man who specialized in fraud. Natalie looked me dead in the eye. This isn't just theft anymore. Fraud. And possibly conspiracy. I felt sick. Not angry. Not sad. I texted Daniel the name. "Do you know Alan Mercer?" He replied within seconds. "Lose my number." That told me everything I needed to know. I called my mom. Straight to voicemail. My dad picked up. "No hello. Just, if you do this you'll lose your family forever." I told him, "You already lost me." Then I hung up. Monday morning, Natalie filed the criminal complaint. Not just theft now, but also fraud and involvement with a person under federal investigation. It was out of my hands. And I was good with that. Wednesday morning they came back. My parents stood outside our house again. This time there was no yelling. My mom had a manila folder clutched in her hands. My dad looked like he hadn't slept. We let them in. I didn't offer coffee. They sat down like people walking into a courtroom. My mom opened the folder. It was a full breakdown of their finances. Property, savings, retirement, everything they owned. She slid it toward me like she was surrendering. She said they were willing to sell it all. Empty accounts, cash out pensions, even sell the house. She said they'd do anything if it meant I'd drop the charges. My dad said they made a mistake, that they just wanted to give Daniel a chance they never had. That when they saw how much money we had, they thought, maybe it wouldn't matter. That we'd understand. That we wouldn't miss it. That we didn't need it. That we'd get over it. I didn't cry. I didn't even get angry. I just nodded. They left thinking that maybe I was softening. But I wasn't. Because I hadn't forgotten that they were only here because they were caught. Then the next morning there was a knock at the door. Daniel. He stood there alone, eyes red, backpack slung over his shoulder. He looked different. Less like the arrogant golden boy I remembered, more like someone who hadn't slept in days. I opened the door. My husband stood behind me. Daniel didn't look at either of us when he spoke. He said, I need to tell you something about Dad. And everything I thought I knew about what they'd done, all of it shifted. Daniel never looked like that before. No swagger, no smug little smile. Just hollow. Like he'd aged 10 years in a week. I stepped aside and he walked in without saying another word. My husband stood by the kitchen, arms crossed, not ready to play nice. Daniel didn't sit. He stood near the couch, fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. He finally looked up and said, I didn't know about the safe. I didn't know where the money came from. Not until yesterday. I wanted to believe him, but I didn't say anything. I waited. He said he was staying with a friend after the school blocked his enrollment. Our parents weren't answering his calls anymore. They'd gone completely dark on him too. At first he thought it was just a temporary fallout. Then he started digging. He went into my dad's study, logged into an old email account on the family computer. There, he found a long chain of messages. My dad and that guy, Alan Mercer, had been emailing for months. Way before the tuition was due. The plan wasn't last minute. It had been in motion since February. That's when Daniel said something that actually made me sit down. There were emails about moving more than just my money. Not 62,000. Closer to 90. Daniel read them all. My dad had started slowly draining their own retirement savings the year before. Gambling it on a few risky trades he thought would pay off. They didn't. He lost nearly everything. My mom didn't even know. He was desperate. So he came up with a plan to rebuild the money and save face before anyone found out. The safe was the easiest target. He figured I wouldn't check often. He knew the code. He convinced my mom it was for Daniel. She never saw the full picture. And then came the worst part. They didn't stop with me. Daniel said one of the accounts mentioned belonged to our grandfather. His will had left a modest sum split between the grandkids. My share was untouched. His wasn't. Dad had already pulled from Daniel's portion months ago. It was gone. Daniel looked at me and said, he robbed me too. I just didn't know it yet. And that's when it really sank in. This wasn't about tuition. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust. This was pattern. A quiet, careful siphoning of anyone they thought wouldn't notice, or wouldn't fight back. My husband walked over and asked the one question I hadn't yet. Why are you telling us this now? Daniel hesitated. Then he pulled out a small USB drive from his backpack. He said he made copies of the emails. Screenshots, PDF files, login activity, everything. He didn't want to protect them anymore. I asked him what he wanted in return. He shook his head. Nothing. I just want to be done with them. We took the drive. Natalie would want it. Changed everything. Because now we had more than a theft case. We had evidence of deliberate financial deception, concealed assets, and internal fraud involving multiple family members' accounts. Natalie came to our place that night. When she saw what was on the drive, she went completely still. Then she looked at me and said, they're done. The police report was updated immediately. The investigation was widened. And this time it wasn't just my parents' names on the radar. It was Mercer's. And the chain connected back to more than just our situation. By the weekend, 2 detectives came to our door. They asked questions. We gave them everything. And by Monday my parents were served with a court summons. Not a letter. Not a warning. A full civil suit and pending criminal charges. They showed up again the day after. Not to threaten. Not to lie. To beg. And what they said next was worse than anything they'd done so far. They showed up without warning. My mom looked like she hadn't slept in days. My dad didn't even try to hide how broken he was. No folder this time. No weak explanations. Just desperate, pleading eyes. We let them in. I wish I could say I stayed calm. That I held on to that cold detachment I'd been carrying since this started. But the moment my mom opened her mouth, the whole thing nearly fell apart. She started crying, telling me they never meant to hurt us, that they were scared, that everything spiraled out of control. She said they couldn't bear to see Daniel fall behind, that they thought they'd be able to pay it back eventually. Then my dad spoke. He said the charges would ruin their lives, that we'd destroy the family name, that we were making a private mistake public. He begged us not to press forward. He said, "We're still your parents." My husband asked him one question. "What would you have done if we hadn't noticed?" My dad didn't answer. That silence told me everything. They never planned to give it back. They never thought we'd fight this hard. They thought we'd fold. Like always. My mom dropped to her knees. Literally. In our living room. She kept saying she was sorry over and over. That we were her children. That this family couldn't survive if we kept going. I helped her up. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just said, "You should leave." There's nothing left to say. They didn't argue. They walked out like shadows. And I stood there in my own home, the place I built with my husband from nothing, and realized something that made my stomach turn. They didn't regret what they did. They regretted getting caught. That night, I sent a group message to my entire extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The ones who'd always treated me like an outsider, who constantly praised my parents and their perfect little son. I sent them the screenshots, the emails, the bank transactions, the court documents, every last piece of it. And then I sent one line. "Since no one asked what happened, here's the truth." Within hours, I was getting flooded with calls and texts. Some were shocked. Some didn't believe it. Some immediately started defending my parents, saying I was tearing the family apart. But a few thanked me. Quietly. Privately. And then word spread. Suddenly, my parents weren't being invited to family dinners. My mom's book club kicked her out. My dad was removed from a volunteer board he served on for years. People who used to treat them like royalty were keeping their distance. Me. They started calling me bitter. Told, I'm forgiving. I became the villain in the family story. The daughter who turned on her own parents. The one who couldn't let it go. Even Daniel, after everything he confessed, started pulling away again. Said he didn't think I'd actually burn it all down. But I did. Because I wanted the truth out. I wanted them exposed. And if that meant being hated by everyone who was too cowardly to face it, so be it. My husband stood by me through every part of it. And when I told him I didn't want to see my parents again, not at holidays, not at funerals, not ever, he just nodded. That was 6 months ago. We haven't heard from them since. No letters. No voicemails. Just silence. I know what people say about me now. But I also know this. They stole from us. Lied to us. Tried to ruin us. And I gave them every chance to make it right. They made their choice. And I made mine.